Tim Legler, ESPN. You can hear him on SiriusXM NBA radio as well. And he joins us now for a look at this Sixers team in the NBA. Legs, obviously a week into the season, but we've already got some interesting storylines. Injuries with the Sixers. Say it ain't so, man.
What do you know? We're talking about a top draft pick for the Sixers having some injury problems. This thing with Markelle Fultz has been strange just because you feel like there hasn't been complete transparency with what's been going on with him. And instead, it's been so much speculation about, why his shot looks the way it does and why he's refusing to really look at the rim from beyond the three-point line. This is a player that I have, I've worked out. I've been in the gym with him the last couple of summers. He doesn't look anything like the player offensively that I expected him to be to this point. So I too was scratching my head just wondering what's going on, and it seems like now more information started to trickle out that he's more affected by the shoulder than people realize. And that's the only explanation I have for why his mechanics look the way they do, particularly at the foul line, because it's not only is it not recognizable for Markelle Fultz, it's actually, mechanics that I would describe as, viewer discretion is advised if you let young players watch it, because it's just so ugly that I've never really seen anything quite like it, and much less for a guy that as a guard coming into the league, is known to be a big-time scorer. So we've all been wondering what's going on with that, and it looks like it's more to do with the shoulder pain than anything else, and now we've got to see how long it's going to take to get this cleared up, and we can hopefully get him back on track and look at his shooting stroke of what we came to know over the last couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, one, if you watch him at Washington or even in the Summer League, he looks like a completely different guy, number one. Number two, if you just watch his body language in his face, he looked like a guy who almost felt he didn't belong out there. Like he just looked absolutely overwhelmed by his presence on the floor. And it was like, is he overwhelmed because he's playing with Simmons and Embiid and they're just so dominating presence that he doesn't feel like he belongs, or is there something going on in his head? Like he just certainly looked like something was not right there. So should the Sixers have even had him out there, or were they doing this because they didn't want to catch more flack for sitting another guy?
Possibly, or it's also possible that Markelle Fultz wasn't being completely forthcoming with them about how it felt.
Right.
I do think there's more to it than the shoulder, and I'm basically referring to what you just alluded to. He looks like a guy to me that from the very first game in Washington, he looks like someone that is trying to make a whole game happen every time he catches the ball. You can't play that way. You have to let the game come to you. You have to be more patient. And for me, it's almost as if maybe he's trying to justify being the number one pick.
Yeah.
The pressure that comes along with that, because he's in too much of a hurry. And when you're in such a hurry when you catch the ball, you're not processing what the defense is giving you. You're not reading it correctly. And so as a result, you're taking the ball into bad places. You're not you're turning the ball over when you shouldn't be. You're not taking your time when you catch it to look over what's there and then make the right read and the right play. I think that he's just in too much of a hurry. He's too anxious. And as a result, hasn't looked what we expected him to. Certainly not what I expected him to. I was on board completely with the pick. And, you talked about him at Washington. I even got to see him, I think, play at his best, which was in the Under Armour circuit on the AAU. I was coaching in that, and I got to work with him at the Curry camp. That just top 30 players in the country. Steph Curry has at his elite camp. Markelle Fultz was arguably the best player in the gym 2 years ago. And there were guys in that gym that went in the lottery the same draft Markelle Fultz did. So he hasn't been as comfortable, as confident, and as productive as I expected him to be. And I think it's a combination of he's not completely right physically. That's affecting, why he's not looking at the rim from distance, because maybe he's got such pain in his shoulder, he's afraid he's going to uncork an air ball from out there. So he's not even looking to score from out there, and that changes the game for you if that's a part of your game. And I think the other part is, he's trying to justify where he was picked and who he is, and he's playing with two other top young stars. And I think there is pressure on him that's affecting him a little bit. So I think it's a combination of all of that. I am certainly not giving up on Markelle Fultz. I do think he is going to be a very good NBA player. I'm not exactly sure what his ceiling is going to be yet, but I think some people have overreacted to what they've seen through 4 games.
ESPN NBA analyst Tim Legler, Sirius XM NBA Radio. Now, you just mentioned that there's other guys on the floor. Let's look at Ben Simmons. Better than you anticipated, about the same. He's already got a triple-double, a bunch of double-doubles. You know, he's a guy who doesn't even look to shoot from the outside, yet he impacts the game big time. So what have your early impressions been of Ben?
Yeah, I would say better, Mike, because, you know, when they said he was going to play point guard, I was very skeptical that was really going to be the case. I thought what he really was going to end up being was a forward that can handle the ball, okay? And there are teams in this league that have that luxury of having a guy that plays the 3 or 4 spot that can handle the ball as well as a point guard, but he's not the guy that your primary outlet pass is going to. He's not the guy that brings the ball up after made baskets or dead balls in the backcourt. Well, I was wrong about that because so far that is how they're using him, as a legitimate true point guard. I didn't know if he was going to be able to handle that. So the fact that he has been playing that primarily and playing as well as he has been very impressive to me. He is a unique weapon and talent. I put a very short list of guys in the history of this league that have had the combination of size, speed, handle, and vision that Ben Simmons has. Very, very short list of guys. I mean, LeBron James, Magic Johnson are really the two that come to mind that have that combination in one body. So give him credit because he has really handled that well. It's a very difficult transition to make, even for a guy that's played point guard his whole life, to then play it in the NBA. It's a struggle for most young players, but particularly when you really have never played that position primarily. This is the first time he's done it. To do it with the success that he's had has been pretty amazing to watch. You know, one of the things he has going for him, even though he's not a great shooter, he's not looking to shoot outside the lane, the fact that, you know, people are going underneath screens on him at 15, 18 feet.
Right.
He is so long that when he comes off the screen, even though his defender went underneath and expects to meet him on the other side, he's so long and quick that by the time that defender comes under that screen, Ben Simmons is taking one long stride and he's by him, and he's at the rim anyway. And that's very, you know, hard to do. Most guys that go, you know, guys go under you, you're going to find a lot of traffic in there. It's too crowded. Well, he's so big, and at one stride, with that one extra dribble, he can get past those 2 initial defenders and be at the rim before the help side can get there. So he's been pretty impressive that way. I will say this. He's going to need to add an ability to make shots from 15 to 18 feet, I think, and maybe beyond, to really fulfill that ceiling of a transcendent superstar. And we'll see as time goes on and teams adjust to him if that starts to affect him. But right now, he's had great success early without having to make jump shots.
Yeah, Legs, and I mean, you see Cleveland last night moved LeBron and played him at point. You got, obviously, Al Horford the other night saying this guy's going to be a handful. The word I use is his intuition is unbelievable, where he just knows where guys are going to be, and if Embiid is knocking down the 12 to 15-footer like he was the other night, those guys are going to be a handful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Joel Embiid was a little bit frustrating to watch early because he was just camped on the perimeter. And, you know, he's so dominant when he catches the ball on the post or the short ISO area, which is, you know, that's 5 to 6 areas off the post. So he's at 10-12 when he catches it, turns faces, because he's got a great first step. He's got a great spin move off one dribble, and he's at the rim. He can overwhelm you with his size and strength. And he can also just turn face, and if you lay off him, he can make that shot. So he's mixed that more into his repertoire the last game when he really destroyed Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see him, you know, utilize everything. Like, you know, Karl Anthony Towns, you watch him most nights, he shoots jumpers, and we love him for that because he's 6'11" and can go out and make a three. But that's not where his bread is buttered, and he gets that, and he uses the three after he's set you up with how he dominates you in the paint. And that's where Embiid needs to be. That's, to me, when he's his most efficient, when he's mixing it up. And he did that the other night. And look, you know, you're talking about 2 guys that are just a serious load to handle and require really extensive game planning defensively of how you're going to deal with them. Where are the doubles coming from? Are you going to trap Simmons on ball screen? Are you going to trap Embiid in the post? They're both good passers. So the versatility and size that they bring to the table, very unique. And the Sixers obviously counting on this being a duo that's going to lead them places in the future. Now, if Fultz can get healthy, get right, and get comfortable, you were really going to have a high-powered offensive team out there at all times.
We're spending some time with Tim Legler here. The Sixers tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. They're going to have their hands full with this Rockets team, obviously. No Paul, though, for them tonight, but obviously James Harden. Let me get your take on Okafor. I mean, Embiid doesn't play. They give him some minutes. He's productive in the minutes, and then Embiid comes back, and then Amir Johnson gets the minutes, and Amir's a veteran guy, but are you surprised, or would you like to see Okafor getting those Amir minutes? Or, I mean, it seems like a bizarre way that they're handling this situation.
Well, it's almost as if when Embiid is there, they think they've got enough offense, and now they'd rather have somebody that's more of a rim protector. And Amir Johnson is going to give you a little bit more of that than Okafor is. It's funny. I was talking about this yesterday with somebody. I'm saying, you look at a guy like Okafor and his very, very defined skill set, which is, he's one of the better back-to-the-basket low-post players in the NBA. I mean, he really is. He can go either block. He can turn either shoulder. He's got soft touch with either hand. He's got great footwork down there. The problem is the league doesn't value that the way that it once did. And so as a result, even though he's going to be productive if you give him playing time and you give him touches, he's going to be productive in what he does. The league doesn't view playing the game that way as valuable or the way that they want to play it. Joel Embiid, obviously, is a higher-level talent. He's a higher ceiling than Okafor. He scores from all over the floor. He can take you out to the three-point line. He does more that way. They feel like when he's playing, I think, and Simmons is out there, they've got enough offense. Now and Covington is making shots, and Redick can make shots. They've got enough of that, so they'd rather give those minutes to someone that can impact the game in other ways, because that's not really Okafor's strength. It's a very strange situation. It's almost like they've kept him around this whole time as an insurance policy,
right,
to make sure that these two bigs stay healthy. And if they do over the first half of the season, I don't see what the point is of holding on to him. And I think you'd have to look to move him, because there are teams that don't have bigs that can score on their roster, and he might fill in a nice need, and now you can plug in another area of your team.
Hey, Timmy Legler's with us. Legs, we had Dario on right before the season, and I asked him about coming off the bench, and he said, he's okay with it, but he'd rather start. Does he seem a little clunky with Ben Simmons out there? I mean, do you like the way they've been using Dario? He doesn't seem like the same guy who played last year. Now, that was without Embiid, and when he really excelled, but he seems a little clunky right now.
I think it's just a matter of, he had immense freedom last year. And
right.
The one thing about Dario, his IQ is off the charts. And that's the thing that stood out to me from the beginning. And, he was just out there playing so much, playing so freely, no expectations on the team. And so he was able to really find himself as an NBA player. And the more he touched it, it felt like the better the offense was when Dario Saric played last year. Problem is, now you got a forward in Simmons who's got the ball most of the time he's on the floor, and he's going to be out there for 30-plus minutes a night. Joel Embiid obviously is going to touch it a ton. Even when Fultz has played and will continue to play, he's going to have opportunities where he's got the ball making plays. It almost feels like all of those things add up to the ball being in Dario's hands less. So now he's got to figure out how he can redefine himself now with, number one, new pieces on the floor that demand the basketball, and two, expectations on a team for the first time in a while. And he's got to find a way now to still have an impact the way that he did last year. Right now, it's a little bit of a jolt to his system because he just did whatever he wanted to do last year because they needed him to do that. They don't as much this year, and so it's a big adjustment, and he's having a very difficult time finding his rhythm. And I do think it would behoove the coaching staff if they made sure they figured out a way to put a couple of wrinkles in so Dario Saric feels a little bit more included right now, because I think he's a wasted offensive weapon if he's just going to be an afterthought, because he's better than that. Yeah. And I think that's something that Brett Brown's trying to figure out too, because he has these dominant pieces now that he's utilizing for the first time.
Right. And they had him in the first game half against Detroit. He seemed like they had him going for a little bit, and then he kind of faded off a little bit. But I'll tell you what feels good, Legs, is the fact that you're disappointed when you're losing these games now. Like in the last couple of years, you knew what was going on. You were just kind of watching, trying to uncover talent. to have definitive disappointment for not closing the game out is a nice feeling.
Well, it is. And I'll tell you what was kind of cool. I'm a Redskins fan. I was at the game the other night down at the link on Monday night, and there was a lot of people in the area, my section. You know, we were talking who recognized me, whatever, and the Sixers were playing at the time.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many people were like really into their cell phones, getting updates and box scores. And like, you know, I went to the game. I was there to watch a football game, but I was getting updates from all the fans in my section about what was going on with the Sixers that night. And Simmons had the triple-double, and Embiid had 30. And so I thought that was kind of cool because that wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. And now the fact that people are expecting results, they want to see this team, but they also want to win games and they want to be in the mix. And I think that when all is said and done, I think they will be in the mix.
Yeah.
I think that it was difficult early when you came out with minutes restriction, no back-to-backs. That's going to still create some problems, I think, for Brett Brown. You know, and you wonder what the number is going to be in the playoff mix. I think you're going to have to be close to 500, maybe at 500
right,
to make the postseason. So, look, every one of these games they let slip away late, or Embiid doesn't play, or he's on a minutes restriction, and you think it would have made a difference. You know, every one of those you let slip through your fingers, that's one less opportunity to get to that number you need to, even though it's early in the season. So I think that's what fans are feeling a little bit, and they're a little bit frustrated with a couple of the early losses. Tonight's going to be a tough one, man. Houston is a really tough team to defend. 1-4, you know, you start to look at the schedule and you go, man, if they get off to a 2-8 start, that's going to be tough.
Which should be expected, though, right? I mean, I figured they'd get out of the gates slow, and in those two games they lost, Boston and Washington, you should be disappointed. But if they lose those games in January, you should be pissed. The way they lost that game. Now you can understand a little bit. You lose that game in January when this, you know, everything's gelling a little bit better. You should be very upset the way that they lost those games because they handed those two games over.
No, I agree, and that's what people. The key is going to be that an understanding,
right,
that this team should get better month by month.
Correct.
And if they're not, you've got a problem, particularly if everybody stays healthy, and that's not happening. And you don't see their ability to close games out at a higher level in mid-December than it is right now. And they're not better defensively. And you still have guys that aren't comfortable in their role or not playing well. Yeah, then you can realistically start to second-guess some stuff and question some things. It's too early to do that. And, you know, you would love to have seen them get that Boston game in particular. Washington, that's a tough one on the road to open up. That's tough. Boston at home, with what they're dealing with right now, that's a game that they would have loved to have. If they're sitting at 2-2 right now, with Houston coming in, you know, they feel a little bit different than at 1-3, but at least they did win the last game. They got some momentum, and they do get the Rockets at home first. So let's see how they come out tonight.
All right, at Legs ESPN NBA analyst, Sirius XM NBA Radio, Timmy Legler here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN. Legs, always a pleasure, my man. We appreciate it.
Oh, sure, Michael. I'll catch up with you soon.